Welcome, I'm TAMKO and you are listening to African Action Heroes, the podcast, the online community developed by and for creatives and changemakers of African descent to facilitate promotion, collaboration, and empowerment. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time, hear what you can expect. An open-hearted conversation with creatives and changemakers of African descent, sharing their journey, useful tips and insights to help you to be at your very best while creating content and stories about us through our own narrative. Also, it will be a great opportunity to discover and connect with incredible and inspiring rising stars looking like you. Thank you very much for being here with me at African Action Heroes. So today our special guest is the Emmy-nominated VFX supervisor, Leo Bovell.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I have so many questions, but I'm gonna try to to sum that up. But yeah, to start, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about what does a VFX supervisor do?
A VFX supervisor he's kind of the bridge between the traditional, between the directors and production and the other creatives, a bridge between what's practical and then what is being done on the computer. Mm-hmm. Basically, visual effects that are being generated in the computer, or as we will say, computer generated graphics. So he's kind of that bridge, and he kind of guides them through the process of getting all of these computer generated graphics incorporated into their film in terms of best practices, vendors or visual effects shops that we want to, who are particularly good at, doing a specific kind of effect. And he's also going to make sure that quality level is being upkept and the creative design and taste of the overall production is maintained from the visual effects side.
Okay. And I feel like you're still being very humble because so as I told you, I've done interview of people in the VFX industry, and I've been for 2 years media partner for FX Montreal. Yep. And so that's why I know that VFX supervisor is kind of the top of if we put the hierarchy in the VFX industry, VFX supervisor is kind of the top of the role.
He's the top. He's the guy who is making sure all of the VFX is delivered to back and it looks great to the director. So he's kind of in charge of all of the visual effects in the houses and making sure that quality is met, the creative design is met, all of the expectations are met. So yeah, it can be a lot of pressure, but I like to remain humble about it because I had an artist background.
Yeah.
And even as an artist, I took on a lot of responsibility. I shared in that responsibility of the VFX supervisor who is above me.
Yeah.
So I like to be humble because I got to give the guys below me credit as well because they're bringing it. They're the ones who are doing a lot of work. I'm just there facilitating and kind of guiding them through the process. And sometimes they guide me through the process. Sometimes and that's the cool thing about being in a creative space. You might expect, A, B, and then someone blows your mind away by showing you D and E, and you're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so, I like to be humble about it because it all comes down to the team and the people that you have working with you,
But that's I think that your mindset and your attitude shows a lot of leadership in the like real sense of like guiding. You're not the boss, but you're the person that help people to grow and to create the yeah to achieve the common goal.
Yeah, I think that's the way to approach any creative process.
Mm.
You know, anything from music to anything that's creative. It's all about collaboration
Mm-hmm.
and someone helping me be better at who I can potentially be, and in the same turn, me helping them be better at what they're doing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's how we win.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And also, like when you're like VFX supervisors, that's imply as well that you have like huge like technical skills and like artistic sense also, and that you understand like the real world, because in VFX basically you recreate the you recreate like the physics
Yes.
happening in the world on the using computer graphics, and that's not an easy task.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting because when I first started, I thought that it was mainly that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a large percentage of my colleagues who are that way. They're very technical.
Mm-hmm.
In both the computer and also the practical.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are some who are more gifted technically, but lack a bit of knowledge on the practical side.
Mm-hmm.
And it all depends on the job you're doing where that expertise comes into place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone, every VFX supervisor has a strength that they rely on. Because you have a lot of supervisors from multiple backgrounds. You have supervisors from compositing side,
Mm-hmm.
where they spend more time in compositing layers of footage and CG generated footage. So they kind of approach any technique that they have to plan in with that mindset. There's some who come from a more traditional practical background, so they're going to approach shooting and giving advice to the directors from more of a practical methodology standpoint. And then you might have myself, which is just a mixed bag of it all, where I'm just looking for the most optimal easy way that yields also the highest results. And that's kind of me. I'm a bit of an all-rounder, if I had to say. I pride myself on that because it's taken me many years to become well-rounded. Like they say, jack of all trades, sort of master of none, maybe. But yeah, I can hold my weight in the ring, as we would say. But yeah.
But today I don't want, because I hope that I will the opportunity to discuss with you again on the African Action Heroes. But today I don't want to be like too much into like technical stuff and the VFX supervisor like roles, but more about like I would like to talk more about you and your journey. So so tell us a little bit more about your journey and what make you work in this industry?
Strange. So as a kid, I used to draw a lot, but I used to draw especially Garfield from the comic strip.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time drawing him, and then same with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And when I said I drew, I would spend maybe, if I was awake from 8 in the morning, especially on summer vacation, if I was up at 8 in the morning and I kind of went to bed around 8, 9, I would be drawing maybe from 9 o'clock after my breakfast to like maybe 5, 6 in the afternoon. I wouldn't even go outside and run around or anything. My mom or my grandmother would have to come stop me and say, hey, it's time to eat. There are days where I didn't eat because I was just drawing the whole time.
Yeah, I can relate completely.
Yeah. So I had that passion for a very long time. And then at some point, I just looked at it as something that I could do. I didn't understand or appreciate that it was a skill, a talent that I had. And I kind of pushed it to the back, or to the side, should we say. Yeah. And I went through school, mainly focusing on other things, basketball, basketball and sports. I was able to get a scholarship to a numerous amount of colleges for basketball. And I ended up choosing one as a compromise to my mother, because my mother wanted me to be a doctor. Okay. Yeah. But I ended up choosing one and I went to study marine biology. Oh. So it was kind of like, well, I wasn't being a doctor, but I was still going to be in the medical field. And I also loved swimming. Swimming for me was one of the few places where I found myself at peace. Anytime I was submerged underwater, I loved to dive. So during the course of me studying marine biology, I had to do a minor study, and my minor study was graphic design. So in graphic design, that course, you obviously had to do a couple of drawing classes and some experimental classes. I was doing well in all the still life classes because, like I said, I could always draw. Even though I put it to the side, I could still draw at a high level. It always made me think, man, if I actually dedicated myself at that time, maybe I would, be way better. And during one of the elective classes I had to do this 3D class. Yes, it was this 3D class. And we're in the class, and the first thing I did like a chessboard piece. And I think the program at that time was called Strata 3D. And I did this chessboard piece, and I was like, man, that was cool. I wonder what else I can do. And the teacher saw my interest in it, and he said, hey, I'm going to give you this new software package. Try it out. The software at the time was called Lightwave. Okay. So I got into Lightwave, and I ended up doing this skyscraper surrounded by water and then dolphins swimming. And it blew my mind that I did all this in a computer. And then I was like, man, I think I can make my own movie. That's cool. And how far back was that? This was in around 2003, 2004. Yeah, 2003, 2004. Sorry, no. Yeah. 2002. Okay. Yeah. And I was amazed, I really was, yeah, man, I could do a whole movie by myself. Not understanding the amount of resources Pixar and these bigger companies were throwing into these animated features they were making. So I started really getting into it, and then I started trying to push it, but the school I was at, it wasn't really designed for that course. And I think within maybe 3 months, the teacher told me, hey, you got to figure this out on your own. This is past my expertise or my knowledge level for this particular thing. Yeah. And, I kept playing around with it. And at the time, YouTube was just up and coming, but YouTube wasn't what it is now. This vast well of information that you can just type something in and someone has a tutorial, right? Yeah. So that was that. And I remember just hunting, finding books wherever I can, borrowing books from anywhere I can and taking them to the library and photocopying the crap out of them. So it was to the point I was making my own books, and I had stacks and stacks of paper, kind of unorganized, but still I knew, like I still had them cataloged in my mind. And then I had a friend of mine, she took me to the movie theater. And she showed me Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
The Return of the, I believe it was Return of the King. The Return of the King.
The Return of the King, yeah.
And I lost my mind. I said, no, this is what I have to do this. This is what I want to do. So right then and there, I started looking around, and I realized there wasn't many programs within New York that would help me develop and learn what I wanted to learn.
Okay. So excuse me, you're from New York. So.
Yeah, I grew up in New York. Well, I grew up a little bit all over the place. If we had to backtrack, my mom is Bajan, so I grew up. A large part of my childhood was in Barbados and also in America. So yeah, I have a Caribbean background, which I love to this day.
Yeah.
Much appreciation for Caribbean culture and food and yeah. So yeah, I looked around in New York, and there weren't many schools or programs really teaching advanced level kind of animation. Everything was out in LA. Everything was out in California. And I only found one real school that had a very detailed program in the animation industry, and that was at the time. It was called the Academy of Art. So here I am in my sophomore year, marine biology, doing pretty well at school. Scholarship, you know. And I said to my mom, hey, I know, you know, it was an uphill battle, me, you know, getting all these scholarship offers and then deciding to go here, but I'm going to go out to California. I need to study this thing. I need to chase this dream. She was very supportive, but she had one question. Well, are they going to give you a scholarship too? And I said, well, no. You know, this is art. You know, there's no academic scholarship that I can get from them or anything. And the school was super expensive. Yeah. It was even more expensive than the marine biology school I was going to. So, you know, I went, took the risk, I went. They basically told me, well, because of a lot of the credits and how their system was, I would have to start, I was essentially going to be starting college over from scratch again. Okay. Which was a little rough, you know, because you're like, what? Anyway, so I did. I dove right in. Funny thing is, as a freshman, because I was always a go-getter, always hungry, always, you know, one of the, I think one of my greatest gifts that I've been blessed with is always kind of being a go-getter and just attacking a problem and spending hours at it, like just being focused the same way as I described as a child. I would just draw all day. I approached many things. And when I played basketball, when I started doing marine biology, and now I'm in California, and I'm already ahead of the freshmen, a lot of the freshmen, because I've already been, like I said, walking around my stacks of paper and studying and doing all of this work. So I was ahead, which was great. I got into a few advanced classes while I was there. And in some ways, I also started to jump onto newer technology that was emerging in the CG animation landscape. I was one of the early adopters at that school of ZBrush. Okay. Where at that time, everyone was looking at ZBrush like, well, no. And I was like, oh, this is going to be it. So I started doing a lot of ZBrush stuff from early, before a lot of it was even adapted or even being taught. By my end of sophomore year, I started to get job offers. Okay. Which becomes problematic because you're still trying to finish school. Yeah. And you're getting job offers, right?
I have a question. Yeah,
Sure.
before you dive into job offer, it's like, so you were in New York, so you went to LA to study in that school, and financially, how did you manage to make that happen?
Um, First year, I had a couple of like a little bit of savings that I brought,
Mm-hmm.
and then some of it was educational loans
Mm-hmm.
that I was taking. That eventually switched up to me just kind of paying my way for whatever I could.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that lasted now to the end of my sophomore year because
Yeah.
I started getting job offers,
Okay.
um, which I was on top of the world. I was and it wasn't insane job offers, but it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
job offers in the industry. Some of it
Yeah.
was medical animation, some
Yeah.
of it was commercials from smaller commercial
Yeah.
companies, um, which was new to me because and I think it's the same for a lot of students and people right now.
Mm-hmm.
When they think of VFX or CG, especially at first, they only think of the ILMs working
Yeah.
on Marvel
Marvel
films, working
movies.
on
Yeah.
movies, and to be honest, um, a really good career, not even at the pinnacle of being a
Mm.
VFX suit, but just being an artist,
Mm.
you can have a really lucrative career in those particular fields. Like they actually pay pretty well in some
Mm-hmm.
cases, or even in many cases, better than the VFX industry. Okay.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sure a
good.
lot of people, if they see this they might have, but
Yeah.
it is true.
Yeah.
Um,
We need the real insights. So and that's a huge one like that you're giving
yes,
us.
I know. Um, so yeah, and
Mm.
I mean, to be honest, if I was probably if I stuck into school and I was
Mm.
still a bit more focused, I would have probably said no to those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I was even being financially supported, I
Yeah.
would have probably said no to the jobs and continued. But
Yeah.
I needed to support myself, and here it is,
Mm-hmm.
a job offer doing what I'm studying,
Yeah.
you know. So, and it became competing because obviously now I'm getting paid to do something that I'm learning. And then at the same time, because real world experience will always trump,
Mm.
classroom experience.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm learning things months and months, or even in some cases, probably a year ahead of what my teacher is going to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
So it got to the point where, at least for one or two of my classes, my teacher asked me to come up and teach the class.
Sounds cool.
And that was yeah, it was cool, but at the same time, it was a turning point for me because I'm kind of like, how much money am I paying? How much money am I paying? So it got to the point where at some point I had so many freelance.
Mm.
I had a bunch of freelance projects going on, and then I still had a full-time
Mm.
job.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I couldn't really pay attention to school anymore, so I had to put a pause on
Mm-hmm.
school, which my mother, being a Caribbean parent, she was not happy about, because for her that paperwork is the most important
Yeah.
thing. That's how she was raised,
Yeah.
and that's what she knew.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started out doing, I would
Okay.
say my first initial jobs were doing medical animation,
Yeah.
and then a few commercials here
Okay.
and there.
That's cool. And so you still had like a supported family to do that, and the how what was the influence of the support of your family on your journey?
Um, my to be honest, my family didn't quite get what I did. They just,
Yeah.
assumed. They said, "Hey, he works with computers." So that was it for them, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So even any of my uncles or anyone they knew who had a computer problem, they would tell them to call me.
yeah.
You know, it is like, I don't do that. And sometimes I would help out because it's my mom telling me her friend or my uncle or someone, their computer won't start. So if I was around, I would kind of open it and, look into it and try to fix it. But that was kind of it. That's what they were saying, well, computers are the way of the future. So he can fix and he can fix computers and install software. So he's going to be okay. That was their mentality at the time.
Okay. I see. And and now, how many years of experience do you have in the industry?
Currently, 17.
17.
Yeah.
Wow. And could you tell us a little bit more about the company you've been working with and the type of project that you had, and if you traveled in some countries or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I've had, in terms of travel, I've had the pleasure to work in France.
Okay.
Germany. Japan. Obviously, and right now, Canada.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the US. It's been a great journey, and most of those places I've actually lived minimum a year.
Okay.
Minimum a year. Some of them, obviously, Canada right now probably is the longest. I've been here for 5 years. Okay. Japan was 2. France was like 2.5, 3 years.
So, did you speak any of the languages?
Little, very little. Yeah. Like I know bits of each one.
Each one, yeah.
Bits of each one. Unfortunately, a lot of the times when you go into those countries, the common language for VFX is still English.
Yeah, still English, yeah.
Right, the terminology and a lot of the terminology is still English, and in a lot of those companies, because they're growing, they always bring a lot of Americans and people from the UK and English-speaking countries into the companies to grow them.
Okay.
So then you always still have a very English-speaking team.
Yeah, because
it's only when you start to venture outside of work, when you need to get around, then you have to try to learn some of the language, and that's where you pick up pieces, bits and pieces.
Because I saw that for Japan, you went in Tokyo and Sendai.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I used to live in Japan, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and Nihongo wa shaberimasu. Nihongo wa dou desu ka? Yeah, because I had a girlfriend from Sendai. So that's why when I saw Sendai in your resume, I was like, whoa, we have a lot of things in common.
Sendai. In Sendai, I was closest to what's the area called? Izumichuo.
Izumichuo.
And then the mountain in that area, Murasakiyama.
Yeah, I never went in Sendai, but Sendai, it's but I almost went, but for some reason I had to. But anyway, okay, that's cool. And also, I'm born in France. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So we have a lot in common, man. And that's I love awesome. VFX as well. So. And I would like to know, when you were in school and through your journey, you probably met different type of people, and is there some people you were looking up to, or did you have some mentors, and how did it go?
It's a really good question. Good question. A lot of the people, I think it's interesting. A lot of the people that I considered mentors, they always felt, and to some degree, they always felt out of my reach or at a distance. A lot of that came from two things. One, me being impressed by their skill set. And then a lot of the distance was something that I self-inflicted or self-projected, because even in my class, there was maybe, not in my class, in the school, put it this way, there was maybe 12 other Black people in that school at the time. Out of the 12, there were maybe 3 or 4 doing CG and 3D and stuff like that, the VFX. Out of those 4, my level, because again, I started before and I was always just going at it.
Yeah.
My level, and also I was an all-rounder, was much different from them.
Okay.
So there are questions that I was prepared and I understood and I was ready to go ask that they weren't there yet at that time. So sometimes when, at that time, to be in those rooms and ask certain questions, I wasn't comfortable doing it yet. Or even when I was bold enough to ask the question, I felt, or I projected, that they looked at me a specific way. Kind of, you know what I mean? And it was totally not the case. Again, this was all self-projected. I'm sure, a lot of them, when I think back, no, they were willing and they gave me the information. But I always kept myself at a distance. And I could have made that mentorship even more of a friendlier experience for myself. But I felt, like such a dark horse, to say, in the room. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just me. So one of the mentors I had definitely was, and I might butcher his name, so forgive me, Paul Canuck. He is one of the technical directors from Pixar. When I met him, he was teaching a Pixar class at the time at the Academy of Art. At the Academy of Art, he was teaching renderment at the time. Very technical course in how to write shaders and solve problems. And what I picked up from that class mainly was how to think and problem solve technical issues. Sure, he was teaching us shader writing and renderment, but it was his mind on how he technically approached the problem. It was a very cool class. He would bring us in stills, etc., from Ratatouille. I think they were in, and how some of the issues he solved on Cars, when Cars came up with the crowds and how they dealt with it.
Could you give us, had to do? Could you give us quickly an example, like more like comprehensive example, not too technical, but that help us to understand like how work those that mindset that.
Well, for example, on Ratatouille, he was explaining at the time, you have an army. There's a scene where you have multiple rats, right? Now, a lot of rats in the computer, what the computer likes to do, the computer is great at copying, right? So we have a lot of rats, and you want the computer to copy one rat to being 1,000 rats. It can do it really well. However, in real life, when we look at those rats, we're going to realize they're all copies. In nature, each rat will have a slightly different hue, a little bit of variance in the fur, etc. And in this example, what Paul basically showed us to do was, hey, we can use some of the data that the computer is generating to create variance in the actual hue saturation of the fur for the rats. So without getting too technical, basically imagine you had 1,000 rats. Each rat would get a unique number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you can then take that data and use it to drive, let's say, a multiplier of purple, green, or whatever, just to offset the hue in the fur of each rat.
Okay.
Right. So and when you think about it, it's like, yeah, that's a great approach, and then you can take that one example and you can apply that across the board to many other things. Let's say we had to generate a forest, right? You're looking at a forest from an aerial view. Each tree has a different hue. It has a different number of leaves, etc. Right? Imagine you took the same approach. Now you assign each tree a unique number, and then you use that number to drive multiplier to control the hue and saturation of the green of the leaves, the size of the leaves, the amount of leaves, and that can turn one tree into now, how many you want with just using the same approach. So, he taught us a lot of stuff like that in the class, how to technically think and approach things and break it down. And for that, I've always considered him a mentor.
Okay.
A lot of the other mentors I had, I would say, were just colleagues, man. You have some people who work with you and they push you. They push you and you're like, man, you're so good. And then one day you're talking to someone else, which is the coolest part, right? You're thinking, this guy Jason, who's your friend, he's just like so good, and he's driving you to be a better artist because you're chasing him. You're chasing him. And then one day you're sitting and you're talking to another guy or a mutual friend that Jason knows, and this guy says, man, you're driving Jason crazy. Like, Jason's just trying to become as good as you. And you're like, what? You're like, what? And that is very cool. And
that's cool.
I've been fortunate to come across a lot of those people in a lot of the different countries that I've lived in teams. I mean, right now, in even here in Canada, there's many people I've met. One guy, Jamie Minette, he's an amazing lighting artist. I mean, amazing. I've never seen anyone approach lighting the way he does, and his work just looks immaculate. And it's the same situation where I'm just like, man, this guy's a beast. I was like, I'd say he's insane. And then I'd talk to someone else and they say, hey, we just needed to talk to you. Jamie's raved about your work. And for me, it's always cool when, the people you idolize and you think are great also think that you're like this force to reckon with, and you're like, wow,
Yeah, but that shows really that you're a beast. No, seriously. Well, that's really impressive to hear, like, all that type of story, and that's really inspiring, I think. And yeah, that brings me to the next question. Can you tell me a little bit more about your cultural background and how it impacts your work and your perspective and your approach when you're doing like what you do?
Okay. So I'll say a lot of my cultural background, as I said, I mentioned my mom is Caribbean, but I would say my formative years, as much as that has influenced my formative years, and by that I mean when you start to come into your own, is really, I personally feel, anywhere between 14 and maybe 18. I'm still growing. I mean, I'm still growing today as a person, but you get what I mean. And a lot of that was in New York, right? And I came up in Brooklyn, New York, and Brownsville. It was a very rough, very, very, very rough neighborhood. A lot of police corruption, political corruption, gang violence. So I grew up in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
And I say that because the school I went to, obviously, the high school I went to was obviously very limiting, based on the location we were in. I think at that time, it was right around the time I graduated high school, there was this lawsuit that happened where they realized the inner city, or the New York City itself, how had enrolled maybe somewhere like 70% of the state's students were enrolled in the city. However, 85% of the funding went upstate.
Yeah.
Which is crazy when you think about it, right? So there wasn't a lot of, technology and great computers and stuff for us to work with.
Yeah.
And again, you always felt like that unwanted thing.
Yeah.
Even growing up in Brooklyn, and going to Manhattan was a trip. That was a trip. That was at that time, that was the equivalent of me going to LA or even to France.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To leave Brooklyn and go to Manhattan. And you felt it. You felt it when you went to Manhattan. You felt it. People looked at you and stuff like that. And we're talking about 2000s here, okay?
Yeah.
So people understand that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, I would say, shaped my demeanor and how I interacted with people. As I explained earlier, with some of the people who I looked at as mentors, I had this self-projecting view that they're looking at me like the people when I went into Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they would interact if they were forced to, but they didn't really want to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of that kept my interaction with them at a minimal. I approached it the same way as I would when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Be quiet, be the smallest voice in the room, be unseen. Don't cause any trouble.
Yeah. Oh my God. Because because I'm coming from the most dangerous place in France, and and there it's pretty much it's pretty much like I wouldn't compare to US, because US you have guns. Yeah. You have like guns is legal because not in France. So I had like few guns, like gun shot around me when I was a kid, and like going through like junkies to go outside, all that kind of things. But I think it's really important that we know that part, because seriously, for me it's like so inspiring, and I really feel like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
No, you're not.
I'm not alone.
And you're not. And I've realized that, especially within the last year or two, and again, that I've talked to Adrian as like, I'm supposed to be speaking at a few schools also coming up, because I realized that there are a lot of people who would like to hear my story and my background, because, for example, I pushed my art aside at that age because of the environment I was in, to be honest. Most of the people that I saw, or successful Black people that I saw, they either played basketball, they were rappers, they played football, some kind of sport. So that's my focus, became sports, because I was like, this is the only way I'm going to make it out of this particular environment. And me now being in a position where I think someone could look and say, hey, like, this is an avenue. I can work in movies. I can be doing this.
You give options. You give options to new generations.
Exactly. It is super important. And the great thing, again, the negative part of what I took from my environment was obviously, as I said, me self-projecting someone's feelings about me. But the good thing that I took was always that being down, having to work 4 or 5 times as harder. That go-getter mentality. No one's going to come save you. You have to do it by yourself. Coming from that kind of environment, it really, that is it, right? That is how it is. And I even to this point, I still approach everything the same way. I still have in the back of my mind, I need to be better and do this better, and just keep pushing the bar, pushing myself.
Yeah.
Hopefully trailblazing for others, bringing my team along with me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because also in the VFX industry, in terms of like a VFX supervisor, it's not really diverse.
No, it isn't.
And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I made some researches online, and I tried to look for VFX supervisors of African descent. And in Canada, you're probably the only one.
Truth be told, I think for a while, I believed I was the only one, not just for Canada, for North America.
Yeah.
But then another guy who he recently became a VFX supervisor, his name is, what is it? Me and him spoke. He actually messaged me. He said, "You exist." And we laughed about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not many. There is not many at all.
Because after I found someone in UK. Like
yes, there's two in the UK that I know of. I think one's at DNAG or MPC. One's at MPC.
Okay.
I forgot his name. I haven't spoken with him yet.
Okay.
There's two in the UK. There's one in New York.
Yeah.
This is the guy that I just recently met.
In New York, is it Greg Anderson?
No, I don't know that guy.
No, because I found Greg Anderson. He's a senior visual effects supervisor and head of studio at Fuse FX.
At Fuse?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of buddies at Fuse. I'd have to check him out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I saw in I forgot the name of the on New Zealand. There is that guy. Hold on a moment.
I know. I think I know here who
Christopher White.
Christopher White.
He's working at Weta Digital as VFX supervisor.
No, have not met him yet either.
Yeah, but seriously, I think you should all like be in touch.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, definitely, you should seriously be in touch because there is not many, and like I told you, like I did for a couple of years a lot of interview in the VFX industry. It was VFX animation and game industry actually. Yeah. And I touched the issue of diversity in those industry that brought a lot of emotion. Yeah, because those industry are kind of like, I think 80 to 90% like kind of Caucasian. The majority is Caucasian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is, and right now, what's happening is like there is not a lot of people of color and women, and there is apparently few initiatives to change the culture, but I believe it's not happening that easily. And I would like to have your perspective on that. When we see like that those industry are not really, I don't know if I should say that are not open to diversity, but there is something.
Yes.
And so what is your take on that?
Well, in terms of myself, I've never chased a role at a company. Mm-hmm. I've always been placed into that role because one of my skill set, and then two, as I said, I'm a go-getter. So There are times where I've been at companies and I've challenged the person, not challenged them openly, but they might want to do something a particular way. And then I already know, like, no, that's not the way you're supposed to do this. This is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if they're receptive enough, I'll just do it my way from the get-go, and they'll be happy with the results.
Yeah.
When they weren't receptive enough, I'd have to do it their way. It would kind of fall through. Then at that point, they become more receptive, and then they say, hey, what can we do? And then, you know, you kind of come through for them, and then they start to trust you more, and then they say, hey, you just do this. And then from there, it's like, okay, you be the lead of this particular
thing. Okay.
And then you be the lead of this particular department. You become the supervisor of this department. And then that's how I kind of escalated my way up. In terms of the whole industry, two-part answer. The first part is, one, I do see it becoming more diverse because I'm watching it. From when I got in, it has become more diverse.
Okay.
The thing that bugs me still, though, it's become a lot more diverse at the worker level.
Yeah.
Not the managerial level.
Yeah. Exactly.
The managerial level, to the most part, has remained kind of consistent where it's at. But I've seen at the worker level, I'm seeing it's churning people in and out, and it's become a lot more diverse.
For the worker level, because I made a lot of researches about that. And at the worker level, but that's my take on that. It's like in the VFX industry, like the turnaround is like at the worker level is very fast, and they need always a lot of people. And also the cost, to be cost effective, you have to squeeze something.
Yes.
And most of the time, because I study economic as well, so the worker salary is what you can squeeze.
Yes.
And to keep that salary very low, you cannot allow people to grow too much in terms of in the company. So you have to change all the time. And since there is kind of a shortage of manpower in the VFX, and there is a boom in terms of demand on the industry, so so they let diversity coming in, maybe not because they like it, but because they don't have the choice. And I think that the energy is not really positive energy. If they bring people to put them at a kind of like slave labor, because that could be, but maybe the word I use is a little bit harsh, but from the discussion I had with the people like at that at worker level, it's pretty hardcore. And I guess you went through that, and you managed, because you are like I feel like you really have a specific set of skills that make that people cannot like ignore.
Yeah, there's that. There's a skill aspect to it, but again, one of the things gifts that I received coming from the neighborhood I came from is, you know, you have to look out for yourself. So even during my courses in college, I started taking business classes as electives. And they kind of frowned upon it. They said, why are you taking these business classes? And I said, well, I'm an artist, right? I'm going to be selling my artwork. I need to know the business side of things.
Yeah.
So from that age, or even in school, I started having that mentality. I started having that mentality. And even when I work for larger companies, I approach things the same way, always. One of the tricks that's happening right now, or that's been happening for a while, is, and it flows all the way from upstream, downstream, right? Everyone has to try to make profit margins. This comes from the distribution company, the production company, to the VFX company. everyone's getting squeezed.
Yeah.
In many ways, the talent loses out. You know, you see this, you know, I love to watch and reference the music industry because I think the music industry adapts protections and new technologies for the creatives faster than any other medium. And we see now there's this big push to get the creatives in the music industry. For a while, they've been always trying to get the artists more money for themselves, because they're like, why is it that the record label is making 100 billion and then the artist is only getting like 5 million, right?
Yeah.
Not true numbers, but you get what I mean. There's a very disproportionate payout happening. And obviously they've been rectifying that throughout the years.
Yeah.
With artists at the worker level, you're being squeezed and thrown so much work that you don't take the time to peek your head up and really understand what you're contributing.
Yeah.
Right? Sure, in some aspect, you're just another cog in the machine. You're just like, hey man, we just need you to generate some rocks over here. Fine, you're doing that. But there's an artist somewhere up the level who created this crazy concept of this landscape that now everyone's executing. And he's also being squeezed. He isn't understanding that he's a very key creative as well. You know? And you see it throughout, even now, it's to the point where for a lot of movies, they finally start to recognize and include an actual full VFX list. You know? Before, it's gotten better in a lot of movies before, and this is not to disrespect in any way anyone that I mentioned, but you would see some people for catering or even porta potty or whatever, their names are there, it's in the movie, you know, and then you would have a guy who essentially brought the tiger to life in The Life of Pi. And his name might not make the credits. You know, and it's just like, whoa, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
And part of it, again, is because as artists, we're taught to just keep our head down and just do the work.
Yeah.
And it needs to get to a point now where we kind of peak up and realize what's going on, especially with remote work going on. And if it kind of starts to grow and broaden in scope, do you actually need to get under an umbrella of one company? Or can you, as a group of artists, come together and have a bit more control? You know what I mean? NFTs are starting to push that whole, I think NFTs are going to push that whole transformation of this landscape in many ways. And I'm hoping it happen. And hopefully because of that, not only does it fuel diversity more, but also diversity in management. You know? Because at that point, it's kind of, you know, the artists, you kind of take a little bit more control. So I'm hoping that's where things go.
Okay, that's good. That's cool that you mentioned that, because that was one of the theme that I was pushing when I was doing a lot of things in the VFX industry, because I'm coming from the music industry, and I was wondering like why like VFX artists or VFX, just like even VFX studio, why they don't get together to create their own IP. And creating IP, it's risky. I know that it's risky. It's not that easy, but if it works, you can get like more. You get more
residuals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I think it's going to start to happen a lot more rapid. Technology is flattening the curve, right? Where, you know, the software that's becoming available is allowing people or smaller groups of people to make their own IPs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's happening. So I see Unreal and all that stuff coming up, and then you're seeing people start to really get into Unreal and make their own like little cinematic shorts. And I'm all for it. I'm just cheering it on and clapping, because I would say 90% of the people who get into VFX are filmmakers.
Yeah.
They might not have wanted to do the biggest feature or something, you know, on a feature length stage, but they had an idea of a sequence or something small.
Yeah.
And it got them into the industry, and they're still chasing it, hoping that at some point they transition into that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm watching all the technology now that's making it more possible for rather than you needing to have a team of 100, you might just need a team of like 6 to 8.
Yeah.
You know, and you're watching it happen. I mean, I think about the dream that I had when I started trying to do that dolphin way back, and then realizing like a year or two later how crazy it was going to be and how much work it was going to be. Now I'm confident I can do that in a weekend.
Yeah.
You know, because things have gotten that much easier to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hoping all of this happens and it brings about that change and that balance.
Yeah, that's
that we were talking about.
Yeah. Because I think that's definitely the way to go. Like artists, they create their own content, IP, they get the money from what they do, and everybody is paid and have a good family life. You know, enjoy life, and you enjoy what you do. You know. Yeah. And okay, I would like to know about the Emmy nomination.
Which one?
The
last one? We can talk about the last one. That's the most recent.
Okay, so let's talk about the last one.
Okay, so that was for the Handmaid's Tale, and it was a sequence that was shot in Washington D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. And what VFX was being asked to do was to fill up the memorial with thousands and thousands of handmaids. Over 50. We needed to look like there were 50,000 handmaids that showed up on that particular day. It was a very challenging shoot in the sense that it was a national park. So at the park, they're not allowed to close the set. Yeah. Right? Okay. Because at that point it would be violating the rights of people to come and right? Yeah. So there were a lot of requirements. We could only shoot 2 to 3 minutes per time. In certain locations, they weren't allowed to record sound. As soon as we cut between the 2 to 3 minutes, they had to let the crowd through, basically, to come in. And yeah, even when we were shooting, at some point, I remember feeling hands and, there were hands and stuff resting on me. I'm thinking it's one of the crew members that I've been talking to, and I look around and it's a civilian basically kind of like hanging out, with me and the directors. And then it's like, hey, you can't be here.
That's extreme condition to make a movie. I mean, sequence. Yeah.
But it was fun. Elizabeth Moss and some of the cast, they were super friendly. They took time out to greet their fans. Okay. We ended up having to, we got the footage, we took it back. The most difficult thing in post, honestly, was to go back in and clean the plates out, because we had to go rebuild the plates and remove all these people who were walking around and taking pictures. Oh my God. Upon cleaning out the plates, we then realized there were people who showed up in handmaids costumes that snuck into some of the shooting. Because they were like, wait a minute, why is your hue of red slightly washed or pink? Like something looks wrong here. Then we realized like, oh, this guy, who is this? So then trying to clean them out as best as we could.
Okay.
And we used a combination of Houdini and Maya to build the digital crowd of the handmaids. We created a numerous amount of cloth sims, basically, and cashed them out so that we could vary and make sure all the cloth sim was realistic. It was following the practical direction of the wind, because we obviously had handmaids that were being shot. And the wind was affecting their gowns, so we had to make sure our digital handmaids matched the wind gust and everything of their gowns.
Oh my God.
We had to make sure we had representation for in terms of race for all of the handmaids, from Asian to Caucasian to Afro. We need to make sure we had it all. And vary it. Obviously, again, the computer goes back to this very early trick that I knew. The computer loves to copy 10,000 people. So, we used a unique ID to kind of alter the timing of the animation, the hue of the skin, eyebrows, everything, just to give unique features to each one of the handmaids. And then obviously too, we had to put flags up everywhere, the Gilead flags. It was like a complete rebuild.
Rebuild of the.
And then just putting the crowd in, and just having them to act. On the day, I made sure that we shot numerous handmaids. I just kind of pulled them off to the side between breaks and had them kneel, had them stand up and do actions and bend and move around, just so I could see the fabric and how it moved, how it interacted when they moved, how it would fold. And we provided all this to Houdini artists who were handling the cloth sims. We also took time to research the garment patterns for the stitching, so that we could physically build our handmade gowns. So they would also kind of, because of the seams and everything, they would move. They would move.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's all that level of detail when you start to really get into it. It kind of makes the end result and the job that much easier, because at that point you're not guessing per shot.
But that must be a lot of pressure, because what if you missed something or you forgot to shot something, or
it happens. It does happen, because one of the things, ideally, you're on set and they shot this thing that you need to do VFX for, and then you said, okay, I need 20 minutes, and everyone takes 20 minutes, and then you go shoot. That doesn't happen, because time is money. Right? And you could be in a production where, let's say you needed 20 minutes throughout the day, right? That 20 minutes easily can add up to more than 2 hours. So now, if you have a cast or extras that are there, and I've seen this happen, and you took 2 hours out of their production's day to gather information, that could end up, depending on what we're shooting, that could easily end up costing them over $1 million. Because they still need to have the cast and stuff there and this is just for them having the cast there for an extra hour and a half. Right? So a lot of times they'll look at you and say, you got a minute, or you got 2 minutes, and you just got to get in there and get it when you can. Or try to do things off to the side. Obviously, if the shot is very, very VFX dominant, or it's mainly they carve the time out because you're like, hey, this is going to cost you on the back end. But a lot of the times it's just finding that balance with production. And you do, again, because of that, you do miss things. But what you have to do is rely on your expertise. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is now where having a technical background can really help,
Mm-hmm.
because you go in prepping, you
Yeah.
prepare the day before as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Things do come up throughout the day or during the course of shooting, but you compensate because you've prepped enough.
Yeah.
You've prepped enough, and even if you do miss something, you've had a plan in place, or some other bits of information that add up to, that you can pull from that add up to the missing information.
Wow.
So yeah, there is a lot of pressure, but
Yeah.
usually you come back and then you're like, okay, we have a plan of attack.
Yeah.
We might have missed this bit of information, but we can still execute.
Yeah, that's cool. And I have to say that I love how you you ask which nomination I was talking about. I wish I could do that.
Well, it again too in one of those cases, yeah, it's a joy to be nominated.
Yeah.
It's a joy to be nominated, and most of the time at those the better times I've had at with the nomination and being at those events is being able to go with or bring along the people who are important to me. When you're in the pit with your team, and you're there at night, and they also see you hopping on the box and helping them, and then as a team you achieve that. I think it's some of the that part for me is the most important, especially seeing people appreciate and also feel that they're being recognized for their work, for their late nights.
Yeah.
And anytime I've been able to aid in that and put or suggest and make sure people can be on that nominated list.
Yeah.
Great. Them being able to be there and attend the ceremony and us having dinner and chatting, that's the best feeling, I think, more than the ceremony itself. Just having it, it's like you did something with, I don't want to say your childhood friend, but it's like you went to war with someone. You defeated this monstrous of a pixel battle thing that you had to do. And now you guys are sitting, eating, enjoying the fruits of that battle together. You know what I mean? And for me, that's the pinnacle. That's the best feeling more than anything else. More than anything else, that's the best feeling. The award is prestigious, and myself, I've always appreciated, being recognized.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of like for me, it's always it's a team thing, and it's having those guys with me.
Yeah, that's really cool to see that you're people centered, because I saw a lot of interview of VFX supervisor, and they don't really mention the team at all, and they just talk about the technical stuff, but in a way that make you feel that was automatic. You almost push the button and poof, that happened. It was complicated, but they don't explain that there is actual people behind that really work hard to make those wonderful imagery happen.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I think sometimes it's the structure of the interview at times.
Yeah,
everyone
maybe as well.
They don't have such a chill platform like yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you. Some of it is that. Some of it is that they actually don't. But I like to think that a lot of it is just the structure of the interview. And obviously, sometimes with some interviews, it's a bit of salesmanship as well that we have to account for. One of the interviews that has always sat and impressed on me was I was watching behind the scenes for King Kong, the Peter Jackson movie. And Peter Jackson was fighting so hard to make sure his animation supervisor got a director's credit. He also did the same for Andy Serkis as well, when Andy Serkis was just doing the mocap and stuff for Kong.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was very important, that a director of that notoriety was acknowledging what someone in these departments were doing. And a lot of other directors weren't.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really important because
yeah,
it was very honest and truthful. You know, he said, hey, I'm a director, and I was making suggestions, but at the same time, I have to acknowledge my animation supervisor was animating the camera and coming up with these ideas.
Yeah.
You know, that he then brought to me. I got to filter them as a director and bring it together as a collective.
Yeah.
But I always thought that was really awesome of how he acknowledged his team and what they were doing. And it gave me so much respect for Peter Jackson as a director. And I've always wanted to kind of, you know, make sure I acknowledge, even in any print interviews, you know, sometimes I know I'm not going to be able to mention all 30 to 100 people, but I want to be able to at least acknowledge the teams and even some of the very key artists that I know, like, hey man, I remember walking by and seeing you there at 3 a.m. every single night for 2 weeks. Yeah. And I want you to know that I know you did that.
Yeah.
I know you did that. And because you did that, it allowed me to save face in front of the clients. You know what I mean? It allowed the team to prosper because you did that and you took ownership and you wrangled it. You know what I mean? I think that's super important. It also kind of helps people to realize and break away a little bit, as we talked about, from just this worker's mentality. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I'm acknowledging your worth. I want you to be able to also acknowledge your worth as well, you know? And I definitely think that's super important for the industry and the creative industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because you're so far, you're the second person, the second VFX supervisor that I met that is really like people centered and care about his team that much, and I think that's wonderful because that should be the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be the way. And also because I saw an interview of what you said reminded me like Spider-Man. I think it was Homecoming, because they had like I think 10 minutes of CG of there is CG scene of 10 minutes, like when there is the Mephisto kind of magic madness stuff, and that was all the VFX team that came up with the idea, because in the script they didn't have anything, and for me that was a shame that they didn't get more credit about that, and yeah, but I know that there is people like you that can make a big difference in the industry, and that's really cool. That's really cool. So I kind of start to understand like what makes you so special, like with your mindset and your dedication. And but I would like to know what made you dedicate yourself that much at what you're doing.
I think it's just been my mentality. Anything I decide to do or I put my mind to, I can't control myself. I just jump into it. And that's probably, again, I kind of, as I gotten older, I recognize that that's probably one of my bigger talents, to be able to dedicate and bring a high level of focus to what I'm doing. Because of that, again, when I've been working at VFX shops, I became the get it done guy. Like, oh my gosh, this thing is impossible. Throw it over to Leo. And you know, they kind of walk away, and then they come back, and then I say, here you go. You know, and that's kind of, I guess, been my mentality. You know, and it's the same. I started out initially just being a modeler, you know, creating these models, and then it was like, man, it'd be so cool to make this thing come alive. How do we do that? And then I started learning. So then you jump down this rabbit hole of learning how to rig and make your characters come alive. And you're like, man, it's moving. I wish I could make it look great and stylized. Okay, well then you got to learn the texture, light, and render. That's a whole nother rabbit hole now that I jumped down. I was doing that for many, for a few years till I started to become more proficient. And I always realized that I'm becoming more proficient because at some point during production, one of the guys that I would think is super cool at doing something, it might be a situation where, I'll give you one. We were working on a show, and there's this compositor I knew, really good. Like, it's to the point I made sure I was working at this shop, and I kind of made sure I got to sit close to him just so I could see how he works. And at one point, they hired some other compositors who were also kind of supposed to be on his same level, kind of senior. And we were in a crunch. There was a shot that wasn't going so well. And the owner of the company, it got to the point where it caught the eye of the owner of the company, and he came by and he started asking about the shot. And the senior guy said, well, I'm doing these 2 shots. I can't do the other one. And then he was like, well, who are we going to give it to? So there's a couple of other senior compositors who are there. He looks at them, freezes, looks at me, and then says, give it to Leo. And at that point, and I've had small moments like that a lot of the times in my career, and then it's like, oh, I just got proficient at this. This guy that I think is cool recognized me in that moment. You know what I mean? So now I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do this. And anytime I've had moments like those, and that's where you kind of you realize you're starting to become proficient. And then at that point, I still focus on it, but I don't focus on it as much, right? Because now I'm like, yeah, I just conquered that level, and then I look to the next level. And it's ultimately, if I look at it, it's ultimately to be. I've always felt the need to master, the totality as much as I can, so that then I can be educated. Which is sometimes it's a great approach at times, but it's a really bad approach because you really need to look into delegating and getting help. But a lot of it, I think, comes from the idea of if I can get a grasp on a lot of this information, I would be able to create or be better at creating my own IP.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I think in many ways, a lot of the combination of those things have been the constant drive is my dedication. As soon as I as soon as I open the door or peek in, I'm like, oh, I need to learn everything in this room.
Yeah.
There's that. And then just the overall goal of trying to be this master of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And be educated at it.
And what are the obstacles that you encounter like during your journey and like doing what you do, and how do you overcome them?
Obstacles, again, me self-projecting. I'm only within the last year or two I've become more comfortable walking into rooms and being myself. Being myself, embracing myself. I mean, let's put it this way. There are times where I might have been in a room. Obviously, I might have been the only Black creative or one of the only Black creatives, or one of the few Black creatives, and something of pertaining to Black culture or very relevant to Black culture might have came up, and I would have known this is totally wrong. This is out of place. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of an example here. An example might be maybe they're in a kind of like it's supposed to be a very light comedy, and there's a particular moment where we're doing something for VFX, but it's supposed to be light, and the track that they're deciding to play is like this hardcore hip hop, like really anti the man, anti-Caucasian kind of tone. And I'm in the room and it's just like, this might not be the tone you're trying to strike. I don't think whoever sound and editorial knows what this is, you know? And a lot of times before I might have kept silent, or even the look of a character that they might be portraying, you know, and it might be totally off. It might be this really bad, stereotypical. And I would have never said anything before. And now I actually speak up. Now I've gotten to the place where I use my voice more because I understand the impact that TV's had upon us as a race. The same can be said for the same can be said in terms of obstacles for, you know, I've been in rooms where I've had 17 years, and because of me, how I look, and people not being accustomed to seeing someone like me in that position, they're willing to listen to someone who has 5 years of experience compared to me.
What?
Yeah, it's happened. It happens, right? And it's they kind of it's not, you know, it's a sad case, but it's more they trust what they know. You understand what I mean? And there's situations where it's been that way, you know. But a lot of it, again, I have gotten to the point where I've started to blame myself more, because again, you've been taught to keep this low profile. You know, to keep this low profile, and not, you know, not make any commotion. But I've started to embrace that myself more and kind of step up. I've recently, one scenario where I could say this definitely happened. I was at a studio, and this studio had a lot of African descent. The studio, we were doing this program where we brought kids in and kind of showed them what VFX is, and, you know, give them advice about how to get in to the industry. And this program had a lot of African descent students that came in. One of the statements that was made at the time from someone high up in the studio, high ranking in the studio, they said, see, you don't even need to go to college. They referenced that you didn't need to go to college or anything to get in to the industry and be at the level where they're at. As much as I get the intent of what was being said, I had to say to them, no, because you're going to be looked at through a different lens. You know, I'm not telling them, I wasn't, you know, and I said, it's a situation where, hey, I'm not saying you need to go get your degree, but you need to make sure you have credentials behind you. Because you're going to be looked at through a different lens. You're going to be scrutinized differently. So when you're being interviewed, people are going to double and triple guess at whether or not you have the right credentials and experience. So when you sit in those rooms, you want to make sure that whatever the representation of yourself is squeaky clean, and it's at the best that it possibly can be, because they're not going to give you a pass. And you know, and as I explained, even me to this day, I still go through it. Where I could have, with all my nominations, with all the credits and stuff that I work on, I still have people who will ask me if I'm sure I can do it for the simplest of VFX shots. It could be something like a wire removal, and they will look at me and triple guess if I could do it or not. And I'm just kind of, it's an obstacle, but we got to get over the hill. So if I'm one of the first and I could still make a good living and bring people over with me, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. I really think that your input is like more than, it's extremely important, and you have to talk more. You have to talk more about it. You have to go in school. You have to go everywhere. And if you're okay, I would like that we meet again. I don't know, like when you are available. It doesn't need to be like right after that interview, but yeah, if you could like find some time and we discuss, because I have a lot more questions, but I think that it might be very, very long. No, not so long, but I would like, as I said, like to have like more chill atmosphere and don't have to rush. Yeah. No, because seriously, that's the first time we met. We just have like exchanged like few emails, and wow, yeah, I feel, for me doing this, it's a kind of therapy because I see like other people good going through things but thriving, and with a lot of success, and still like yeah, having that inspiring vision, and that's wow, that's extremely inspiring.
The work you're doing is very important.
Yeah,
it's very important, and we need people asking questions and putting the answers out there, so that people can go on YouTube and other channels and say, hey, I didn't know. And again, this is something that really came to, last year was a big moment for a lot of people of African descent throughout the world. You came to a reckoning, and it was funny because I had a bunch of opportunities to speak at schools and other places, and I just didn't have the time, and I kind of kept like, maybe, I was like, I'm chasing this rabbit that I got to catch, so I'm gonna find time. And then I realized how important it was for me to kind of, if I want to say, inspire and show people that, hey, this is an avenue. This is something that's attainable. And one of the people who definitely helped me do that was the director of Queen and Slim, Melina. She's very big. She led by example throughout Queen and Slim. She was 100% her, 100% Black queen all the way. We were in rooms, or sometimes creative discussions in rooms, and she would just flat out say, she might say a joke. I remember one example, she said a joke. She was quoting a line from one of the Biggie songs, whatever, because there was something going on in the film. And a lot of people in the room did not get it. She immediately said, Leo, you know what I'm talking about. And again, this is me now, not having a big voice at that time, just want to stay low key. And then I said, yeah, of course I know what you're talking about. And she's like, see, we need to have definitely more Black people in these meetings, and in these rooms. And I totally understood where she was coming from. Yeah. Wow, that's cool. That's so cool. Yeah, because even African Action Heroes, it's that's something I had in my head for maybe 6 years or something like that. But with the event of like last year, I was like, no, I cannot think more. I cannot. I have to do it. I just have to do it. I don't. Yeah, it would be a shame to keep that in my head. And I was like, so I called Adrian, and I was like, okay, Adrian, let's talk. I want to interview you. It started like that. And it was really serious. As I say,
for me it was like a therapy, because I could like see other people looking like me, and we could share, and we could have a platform, a safe space where we can express ourselves without like unapologetically, like really, and sharing things that that we don't hear that much. And now little by little I realized that there is a lot of people like us, but they are as isolated. So I really would like to create a bridge like with that platform and with that initiative. And so that's why I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk with me today. Okay.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. It was my pleasure to be here and to be able to talk with you. Thank you again for creating such a platform and giving me a platform.
Yeah, thank you.
To speak with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch very soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to African Action Heroes, the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, learned something interesting, and had a good time. Continue the conversation on our website, africanactionheroes.com. Make sure to share your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, if you believe this podcast could help or interest someone you care about, make sure to share it. It was TAMKO, our image, our stories, our narrative.